eventually everything that I teach will come to pass. They might not pass right there or after 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, but eventually they will come to pass. Eventually people will come to realize that those who listened to me as I expressed what I knew around them, and those who paid particular attention to some of the issues that I've raised, were able to deal with the challenges of the time better and were able to protect their lives and their race. When an idea is being given and that idea is new, it passes through several stages, which, most people say truth passes through, several stages. The first stage is denial. You deny that is not true. At all, it's not true. It couldn't be true. How can it be true? The second stage is total opposition. You not only deny, but now you oppose the idea, and sometimes violently. And the third stage is where you accept the idea as true, and behave like everybody has known this all along. So, if you imagine some of the things that we have gone through, some of the teaching that I've been giving, both on radio and in television and in newspapers, you can see that all of them are coming to pass. Look at what is happening to young people, to children, to young people who are dropping dead really before their lifespan or before they have lived for some significant amount of time. And look at what is killing them. For some, they are talking about respiratory conditions, breathing conditions, things that stop a person breathing, things that stop a person's body behaving normally because of the food that our children get or our daughters and our sons get. If your daughter is used to drinking sugar and drinking soda and eating Irish potatoes or potatoes and chips and chicken, and if you think that is really a very good diet, then you will be experiencing some shock, some trauma, because that food is going to come back to haunt this particular child, and you could lose this child at an early age. If your child is weak and is born weak and is coughing, has got diarrhea, he's got malignancies, and then you immunize that child and you put foreign substances or pathogens in that child's body, then that child will develop complications. And she could be permanently, her immunity could be permanently weakened because at the time you are making this intervention, this child's immunity has not fully developed. So when I started talking about nutrition, when I started talking about what you are supposed to eat, people didn't pay attention. Every day when I'm going to work, I see these very big women dressed in T-shirts and shorts running up a hill. And I said to myself, well, they don't have to do this. They don't have to run up a hill. All they have to do is go on a fruit diet for a month and go on a juice diet for another month. And everything that they want to shed from their body will go. Because even when you are that big size, running up a hill and coming down could cause you problems. So, number one, the diet that I have always talked about and I have insisted that African people look at food that comes from the soil has come to pass. It is now accepted as wisdom, as routine, that people forget even the battles that we have fought. And secondly, if you don't follow that dietary regime, something horrible would happen to you, or something horrible would happen to your children. So you need to start looking carefully at what you eat and what your children eat. On the question of what is happening around the world, what is happening around the world also makes my point. It makes my point, and it makes it significantly, emphatically. It makes my point diligently, in a straight line. I have always said that this concept of a global village, I have always said that this concept of we are one world, of we share common destiny, of we are all interrelated, is a fallacy, is a falsehood, is an injurious falsehood, a falsehood that causes injury. There is no such a thing as one world. There is no such a thing as a global village. This global village would be speaking what language? This global village would be located in what village? This global village would be trading in what currency? There is no global village. These are terms, references that Europeans have coined, that white people have coined, so that they can siphon off the wealth and the resources and the minds and the strategies, of African people. What they have now started calling, instead of calling them developing nations, they have called them weak nations. And maybe they are right to call us weak nations, because our minds are weak, our thoughts are weak, our philosophies are weak, our ideologies are weak. They are so weak that we come to look at these nations as nations that have solutions, as nations that tell the truth, as nations that don't deceive, as the nations that are righteous. But I have said, and I'll say it again, that white people are not prepared to share power with anyone. White people can't share power even with themselves. There is no historicity. There is no precedent in life. There is no precedent in history. There is no precedent in paleontology. There is no precedent in sociology where white people have shared power with themselves. They don't even share power with their children. They don't even share power with their wives. That is why you have divorce rate fantastic in these countries. They don't even want to share power with members of opposite sex. So how are they going to share power with African people in the continent? How are they going to share power with people whom they call weak? How are they going to share power with people whom they call poor? How are they going to share power with this? This is ridiculous. It is as ridiculous as it gets if you sit in your sitting room and think that this is a global village. It is as ridiculous as it gets if you sit in your thinking room and you think that there is such a thing as international community, and that your opinion will count, and that you appeal. Most of the time people come to me and they say, you know what, we are really one global village. Why do we have to fight for black race? Why do we have to fight for Africans? Let's fight for everyone. And I'm saying, you haven't even united with your own wife. You haven't even united with your own family. You haven't even united with your own nation, with your own clan. You haven't even united as a country. And now you are thinking of uniting the entire world. Charity begins at home. First, unite your world. But look at what is happening around the world. Look at what is happening between Europe and Russia. Europe and Russia are at loggerheads. Europe and America. Of course, Europe is a satellite of America. All these are satellite nations. Europe was colonized by America because Europeans, when they have power, they use it for one thing and one thing alone: subjugation. Any nation in Europe that has power uses it for one thing and one thing alone, and that is subjugation. Subjugation, colonization, domination. That is the principle of European leadership, the principle of European power, power projection. That is the principle of European power governance. Subjugation, domination, colonization, and all kinds of Asian. So there are times when these nations have come together for a short time, but even when they come together for a short time, they can't agree. During the Crimean War, Russia was fighting France and Britain and other countries. But as soon as they came out of the Crimean War, they went into another war, into the European War. And then these powers found themselves on different sides. But look at the Second European War. Now, the Second European War, what you call a world war, Russia was fighting on the same side as America and Britain and France. France didn't fight. France was a coward. France ran away and went to Africa and got Africans from, from Senegal, and got Africans from Cameroon, and got Africans from Ivory Coast, and took them to fight their war against the Nazis. And after that war, of course, France brought back all these people, put them in Africa, in one concentration camp, and killed most of them, or killed them all. But Russia and the Soviet Union at the time were fighting. Russia was fighting on the same side. But even when they were fighting on the same side, they were both competing to get to Berlin so that they can take over Germany. They can take over that nation which Hitler was doing. Look at what Hitler was doing. Hitler got power, Germany got power, it got economic power, it got military power. And what did they want to use it for? Domination. They wanted to use it to dominate. Not only to dominate the whole world, but they started by wanting to dominate their own people. They first dominate weak nations. Then after dominating weak nations, they project themselves on other nations. But when white people have power, the only reason they want that power is to dominate others. They use it for domination. They use it for subjugation. So when Russia was fighting on the same side as America, they tried to get to Berlin. They wanted to get it there first. Russia, got there, and America almost got there at the same time. And what did they do? They divided Germany. One part of Germany went to Russia, another part of Germany went to America. Until recently, I believe it was 1991, when the Soviet Union began to crumble, and then they grabbed these countries, and then they promised each other, you know what, we are going to share power, we are not going to fight each other, we are going to live together. They pretended to be friends because Russia was weak. And then America started. It wanted to gobble up most of Russia. It took, most of the countries of, the former Soviet Union and put them in their realm. And when Russia started rising again, then what happens? All this weak talk, all this soft talk, all this sweet talking. No. Now America wants to gobble Russia. America wants to gobble all these countries of Europe. It already gobbled them up. Most of these nations like Germany and France and Italy and Denmark and Holland and Britain, they are subject states. They are not independent states. They are client states. They are sycophantic states. Sycophantic states. Whatever America says, is yes, sir, yes, master, yes, boss, yes, sir. If America says, Russia shot down this plane, they say yes, sir. If they say Russia is guilty, yes, sir. Let us impose sanctions on this country, yes, sir. Let us go to war. The following day, it's like an orchestra. America leads whatever it wants to do. And what does America wants to do? To dominate the whole world. How does it dominate the whole world? By the military. Go into this world, bomb it into Stone Age, begin by saying this country is a dictator, then say they're shooting their own people, then say they have no democracy, get the United Nations to get some paperwork, and then indict the leader with the ICC, which ICC is, of course, now the new Seychelles, because at the time when they were colonizing all these countries in Africa, they would take the leader and hold him in some island. That's how Kabaka Mwanga got in Seychelles. That's how Kabalega got in Seychelles. That's how Ya Asantewa got in Seychelles. That's how Chetwayo Kampande Zulu got in Seychelles. All these African leaders were taken to Seychelles. The new Seychelles is now the ICC. But what has Russia done? Russia has sought to say, you know what? No, we're not going to be slaves to the United States of America. We're not going to be slaves at all. And besides, we've got some money. We've got more money than America. What's going to happen? China has also broken away and said, no, except these states are still hostages to trade and finance, because they didn't understand at the beginning fractional reserve banking and phantom deposits. Now they do. That is why Russia has withdrawn most of its money from America. That is why Russia is not using the dollar as a reserve currency. It is moving away from using the dollar as reserve currency, or the payments will be made in ruble. Remember, I have said to you, you are not an economist. You are not a politician until you understand the concept of fractional reserve banking. If you understand fractional reserve banking, if you understand phantom deposits, then you can put your hand up and say, I am an economist. But until that time, you are not. You are not an economist. You are not a leader. You are not a politician until you understand fractional reserve banking. I am putting my finger on these two things, fractional reserve banking and phantom deposit. Understand phantom deposit. Understand fractional reserve banking. So, because Russia has withdrawn its money from the dollar, because Russia wants to trade in ruble, because the giant Russian company, Gazprom, wants to sell oil, gas and oil, so oil and gas, to Europe in rubles and not dollars. And because the dollar is not backed by anything other than American guns, America is scared. So it wants to put sanctions on Russia so that it wants to collapse Russian economy so that it can come and gobble up Russia and take off most of Asia. But what has Russia and China and India and South Africa and Brazil have set up an international bank, an alternative bank to the World Bank and the IMF. This bank will start in 2016, and this bank has been given reserves of $100 billion, and another reserves to stabilize the currencies of both nations. And these nations have agreed to cooperate between themselves so they don't use the dollar as a reserve currency. And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. First, you withdraw, your reserves from the dollar, and then you set up an alternative bank, and then you capitalize that bank. So you want to take our bread, you want to take our resources, you want to take the only thing that we depend on, this paper with graphics called the American dollar. You want to take that from us? That is why America now starts setting up what we call red flag operations. Red flag. A red flag operation. A force, sometimes called red flag, sometimes called force flag. Force flag. A force flag is where you go and commit a crime and blame it on somebody because you know there is an advantage in there. America did the Gulf of Tonkin. The Gulf of Tonkin was when they said that the Vietnamese had attacked an American ship in the Gulf of Tonkin that launched America into the Vietnam War, although America was already in the Vietnam War. The other force flag was, when Japanese attacked an American port called Pearl Harbor. America knew the Japanese were coming. They had intercepted Japanese communication, but they didn't warn anyone because they wanted to achieve maximum casualties to cause horror so that America can go in the Second European War, known as the Second World War. The other force flag was when Churchill allowed the town of Coventry to be bombed and destroyed, Coventrized. It was the expression, even though they knew that Germany was coming to bomb it. The other force flag was when America attacked itself in the 9/11 in the World Trade Center and the Pentagon so that it can launch war on the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait and almost all the Persian Gulf so that it can control, the wealth of those countries. The other false flag is what you hear now of these girls from Nigeria, the so-called Boko Haram. The Boko Haram is funded by United States. Boko Haram is funded by European nations. It is part of America's war on terror, to create terror, to terrorize these nations so that once all these children have been captured, once the town has been bombed, then the country is shown as not able to protect itself. And then they begin calling on the colonizer, calling on the dominant nations, calling on the United States to come and protect them. And the United States says, yes, we have sent special forces to come and look for these children. America cannot share power with Russia. America cannot share global domination with Russia, and Russia doesn't want to be dominated. So, what has America tried to do? The dawning of a plane some time ago of Malaysian airline was a false flag operation. intended, calculated to cause harm in Russia. It was planned so that it can happen within the area of that is controlled by so-called pro-Russian separatists or people who want to break away from the American government that was installed in Kyiv, because Kyiv now is run by the American government, or Kyiv in 1914 was run by the American government, and therefore Russia can't accept this. So some of the nationalists in Russia have protested, and they are the people that are fighting in eastern Russia. This plane, which was brought down in eastern Ukraine, was definitely brought down with the acquiescence of the United States of America, and was probably shot down by Ukraine, so that they can paint Russia, have sanctions imposed on Russia. That's why you have seen Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton coming up and said, now let's impose sanctions on Russia. John Kerry coming up and said, now let us impose sanctions on Russia. Even before the investigation, in the whole newspapers in Europe, they are talking about they were talking about Putin's missile. Even though Russia has evidence that Ukraine shot down the plane, even though Russia has shown evidence that the two planes were trading the Malaysian plane, and they chose the Malaysian plane because Malaysia has just lost a plane. So there'd be maximum sympathy for a country that has lost two planes in a span short of time. And this is a false flag operation so that America can take the resources, the market, which Russia supplies with gas, Gazprom, that enables America to become economically dominant, and Russia to become economically self-sufficient. Europeans are not prepared to share power. America will not share power with Russia. And Russia will not share power with America. And they are going to tussle it out, and America wants to launch the operation, which is called Operation Make the Economy Scream. Operation Make the Economy Scream. This is the operation that they had used in Chile, against Salvador Allende. Those of you who think that America spreads democracy around the world, you are deceived. It has never spread democracy around the world, and you need to go and read about Salvador Allende. Salvador Allende played by the books in Chile. He was democratically elected by that particular country. He was democratically elected. He was not a militant. But they killed him still. So that democracy that you are talking about doesn't exist. Democracy doesn't exist. Power sharing doesn't exist. What they did in Chile was Operation Make the Economy Scream. Operation Make the Economy Scream. So they bleed the economy so that people are dependent on foreigners. People are dependent on foreign goods. People are dependent on foreign banks. People are dependent on foreign supplies. People are dependent on foreign factories. And that is what they are not able to do this successfully with Russia, so they want to destroy the market. Markets are important. That is why when Europeans colonize the world, the first thing they would fight for is the market. Market for their goods. Market for European goods and production for these goods so they can be sold in Europe. That is how Europeans became rich, by selling sugar, by selling drugs, cocaine, opium, by selling tobacco, British American tobacco. And it was based on sugarcane. It was based on sugarcane and then cotton. And that is what they have done. When President of Russia is talking, President Putin, he's talking about America can't do to Russia, can't use the same tactics that work on weak nations. When they talk about, and what are those tactics that work on weak nations? Weak nations, first, they separate the people from their leader. Your leader is bad. Your leader is not democratic. Your leader has been in power for a long time. Your leader, kills his own people. Your leader is not accepted by us, by economic norms, like they attempted to say that Jomo Kenyatta's son, Uhuru Kenyatta, who, by the way, is related to, the Banyoro, that he was not. He was not. That this beautiful son of Bunyoro, that this grandchild of Kabalega, one of the warriors that fought the British, that this grandson is not and was not sufficient or capable of running Kenya. So they use all these tricks, and then they use sanctions. They stop you trading, they stop you having goods being imported, and then they fund civil society organizations, what they call civil society organization. They call that soft power. So they come, they fund this organization, come, this debt network, this Human Rights Watch, this, that's ridiculous things like Human Rights Watch. Who told you to watch us? Who's Human Rights? You are from America and you are Human Rights Watch. You come to watch us? Go and watch yourself. Look at the human rights violated amongst yourself. Look at people who you put sting operations. You come and persuade somebody to take, computers to Lebanon. And when he's taking computers to Lebanon, you arrest him on the plane and say you have got a terrorist. Go and watch that. But they use this soft power. They use those techniques. They use the techniques of divorce, cutting off the head of the snake. They look at these countries as snakes and the leadership as the head. So once you cut the head of a snake, then the snake has nowhere to go. It doesn't know what to do. Then you will come and kill the snake. So they want to make these economies scream. They want these economies leaderless. And therefore they begin with this soft power. These agencies that are spread everywhere, they are the people that will be writing on Twitter, this president has done this, this country has done this, they have stolen here, they are corrupt, they are killing their own people, they are siphoning off this, So then the people rise against their leader. It could be a few people, they magnify them, they put them on television, and then they come to have a dome to say that we want to shelter these civilians and a no-fly zone. And before the no-fly zone, they start picking up your soldiers and destroying your barracks and destroying your buildings. And then before you know it, there is a brainwashed politician who stands up and says, take me, choose me. Let me be your proxy. Let me be your pawn. Let me be your stooge. In a country called Uganda, there was a politician called Norbert Mao. And Norbert Mao led probably still leads a party called the Democratic Party. And at one time when America was had finished bombing Iraq and said they had brought peace and democracy to Iraq, this man stood outside the White House, the official seat of power in America, with a placard saying, come and help Uganda get democracy. You have brought democracy in Iraq, and therefore come and bomb Uganda. Come and invade Uganda and install me as the leader and remove the leader that we have. And, put me in power. So they latch on a person like that. They make him a Democrat. They give him the best PR farms. They put him on television. They put him on radio. And before you know it, he's the man in charge. And the first thing that he does, he sells the whole country, privatizes the whole country. And that is what I talked about before. Selling what you have for nothing. When IMF comes, they make you reduce the power of your money. You weaken your currency. Once you have weakened your currency and removed all the subsidies, then they come and buy your enterprises. And once they buy the enterprise, they know the government is not subsidizing anyone, then they can charge any money. And that's what you have seen with Umeme in Uganda. And I was shocked to learn that Umeme had done an agreement with the government of Uganda, signed by traitors, treacherous men and women who represented the Ugandan government. And that in that agreement, I am yet to see, don't take my word for it, go and find out. What I'm giving you here is not written in stone. But I'm told that in the agreement that Umeme signed with the Ugandan government, they said if Umeme withdraws from the country, the government will pay them. If the government cancels their contract, the government will compensate them. And that if Umeme is forced to leave the country because of an unseen circumstances, what they call force majeure act of God, the government will still pay them. That is why, although the the parliamentarians agreed that Umeme should vacate Uganda, Umeme is still here because of the agreement that some of our traitors signed with this company. Some of these traitors are, government ministers, who go and in your name sign off what the country has. Like they signed off Barclays Bank, they signed off, Stanbic Bank, what is now Stanbic Bank, but what was Uganda Commercial Bank. They signed off most of the industries that Uganda has, and now they're starting to see that this was a con, that they were tricked by these cheats, by these tricksters, from Europe, posing at the World Bank, posing at the IMF, posing at the Inter-American Bank, and posing as really economic gurus that come in these countries, to help them. So remember, white people can never share power. And now they call us weak nations. What will make your nation strong is if you do not have to rely on anyone for funding. If you do not have to rely on anyone for clothes. If you don't have to rely on anyone for travel, for communication. If you run your country like you run your family. The family needs its own hotel. The family needs its own distribution system. The family needs its own water system, its own PR, its own clothes. So the country must be self-sufficient because war has now become the dominant future of global politics. War is the language of the world. The communication language of the world now is war. It is either economic war. It is either pharmaceutical war. It is either disease, molecular biological warfare. Like you hear all these Ebola cases happening in West Africa, and happening in Uganda, and happening in Congo, and happening in everywhere you hear all the disease and pestilence. That is economic war. Operation make the economy scream, make the people scared. Show them they can't rely on their own resourcefulness, on their own resilience. They need somebody to help them. War is part of the global language. If you don't have the capacity to fight, if you don't have the capacity to defend yourself, if you don't have power to project, then you are called a weak nation. A weak nation. That is why our hospitals should be seen as part of the military, of a strategic establishment. Our hospitals should not just be accessible by foreigners. You will see. Time is going to come when these organizations, that is why in America, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the National Institute of Health are military institutions. Their leaders wear uniform. They have military ranks. And they are now the organization that are penetrating all around the world, seeking to run and to dominate ministries of health or health facilities and health institutions all around the world. They will be coming to your country. They will be asking to have offices in the Ministry of Health. They'll be asking to have offices in major hospitals and in health centers. They'll be causing all these catastrophes of Ebola and plague and anthrax and nodding disease. That is economy. That is operation make the economy scream. That is biological warfare. Then there is economic warfare. Economic warfare is where they're telling you products are not substandard. They are forcing you to take genetically modified seeds. They are forcing you, they are denying you access to the market while forcing you to open up your market so that whatever you are producing is wiped off that economy. And then you go on your knees and beg, and you are begging for help, and you are starting to use that language. So the language that is known now is the military language. The language of war. War has already come to the world. You have to think of war. You have to prepare yourself for war because war has already come to this country. You can't run away from it. All these groups that you hear, invading Kenya and killing civilians, invading Somalia and killing civilians. It is a language of war that is being exported from Europe and from America. When people are tense, what would they think of? They would think of buying weapons. They would think of buying guns. They would think of buying explosives. And who produces these guns? Who produces these explosives? The same people. And then they will come and offer military assistance. And then they'll come and offer permanent military bases. And they will never leave. They don't have to invade the country to take it over. The country will invite them to take it over. Just like Nigeria has already invited America to come and take it over. To come and have military bases there and locate permanently its soldiers. Why? Because of Boko Haram. Imagine all these men, black men, claiming in the name of Islam that they have come to bring, to make Nigeria an Islamic nation, driving these brand new trucks with these huge guns, and there are thousands of them. And then you have satellites that you tell us that it can read even small print. That if you are holding a newspaper seated in Kampala, it will read what you are reading. That they can even see tire marks on that particular road to tell you what kind of car passed there. And they can't see the tire marks of Boko Haram. They can't see the millions of men or the hundreds of thousands of these men holding big guns, firing up in the air, pushing up smoke. What about taking 200 girls dressed in robes? All of them, the trail of 200 girls in a forest. You are better off missing a trail of 100 elephants, but 200 girls moving in a forest with other men with guns and trucks and motorcycles, and you can't see them. And you send special forces, and it's almost a month, and you can't see them. And you have satellites that can read a newspaper, and you can't see them. And you have satellites that can even see oil in the ground, and you can't see them. And you have satellites that you tell us can even see a man in his bed, and you can't see them. And you can pick sound. You can do an ultrasound scan and listen to the noise of a child's heartbeat inside, but you can't hear the noise of 200 girls speaking. That is false flag. Those girls are probably seated somewhere, having coffee and tea, and, Boko Haram is being given millions of dollars and saying, go and cause chaos in Nigeria. Why? Because Nigeria has got oil, and Nigeria has got water. It has a water basin. The Niger Delta has fresh water, and the world will run out of fresh water in the next 17 years. By the year 2030, there will be no fresh water in the world. It will be doomsday. So, Operation Make the Economy Scream. How do you make the economy scream? You send terrorists. Where are these terrorists trained? In the School of the Americas in America. They have now changed its name. They call it the Western Hemisphere Center for Strategic Studies or something like this. But they have a school, and this school trains terrorists. It's called the School of the Americas. If you are looking for it on the internet, look for School of the Americas. It was to train terrorists, send them in a country, paralyze the country, then the leader is removed, the political system is changed, then a dictator is put in place, and they can come and take wealth and come and take these resources. The same thing that is happening in Kenya. It is the same thing that is happening in Somalia. It is the same thing that is happening in Sudan. The language of Europe and America that it is using to communicate is the language of war. And they are not interested in sharing power. So the best thing you can do, you as a black person, is to share power with yourself, amongst yourself. Empower yourself. Before you can even share power, you have to have power. Look at the instruments of power. Grow food and store grain. Agriculture is power. Ability to grow your own food using your own indigenous seeds, not genetically modified seeds. No, your own indigenous seeds. Having your own granaries, having your own capacity to store this food for a long time, and therefore you require to process juice, to add value to your agriculture. Agriculture adding value, innovation, and invention. You need to invent things that you require for your own particular economy. You need to make your own clothes. You need to make your own planes. You need to make your own cars. You need to make it, and don't lose confidence when you are making it. Don't lose confidence when people start laughing at you. Don't lose confidence when people say that is not possible. It is possible. We have done it before, and we can do it again. But don't be distracted by such a terms as a global village. Don't be distracted by such a terms as one word, as we are all related. No, we are not all related. Yes, we are related in the fact that black people were the first people to populate the world and gave birth to everyone. That white people came out of us as a result of genetic mutation. But right now, those children that you gave birth to, those albino mutants from the caves and hillside of Europe are seeking to dominate the world. Because when white people have power, they seek several things: domination, colonization, and subjugation. They want to enslave everyone. They want to enslave everyone, including enslaving their own people. That's why America has kept Europe almost in a state of servitude. Look at the pain and suffering they have inflicted on the people in Greece, the banks of America, the corporations of America, the pain and suffering they have inflicted on Greece, the pain and suffering they have inflicted on people in Palestine. That war that you see, Israel always invading Gaza. They're invading Gaza because Gaza has oil, and Israel needs that oil. They don't want the Arabs to exploit the oil because now they can have some money, and then they can look after their own people, because their organizations know how to look after their own people. So they want to sabotage those operations. It doesn't matter whether people in the Gaza Strip or in Gaza elect Hamas. No, in the Palestinian territory want Hamas. No, it doesn't matter. What matters is Israel, because Israel is a settler colony. It is a settler colony that was imposed in that country by America. And what is the language of Israel? The language that is replicated through the Bible is war. War and bloodshed. When you are complaining about Israel invading Palestine, Israel's story, even though the people who populate Israel now are not the original people, these came from Russia, but it is a story of war and bloodshed. How does God get the Israelis out of Egypt? By bloodshed. In fact, blood was to be smeared on the house of every Israeli, of every Hebrew, before they leave Egypt. Then they tell you that God, killed the Egyptians' firstborn. That is normal, in that story. Then they tell you God destroyed the army of Egypt. Then they tell you they killed every man, woman, and child, cat and dog in Canaan. That is the whole story. The language that they have is the language of war. And the language that we always had in Africa was the language of cooperation, was the language of harmony, was the language of interdependence, was the language of cooperative economics, was the language of invention, was the language of I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am. Now, in Uganda, you also had this phenomenon that has been going around of, which I think I should comment on, of this brother, my brother Sejusa, or my brother Tinyefuza. As far as I'm concerned, Tinyefuza is holed up in London with no capacity for mounting any form of disturbance in a country that the English called Uganda. I suppose the biggest worry that the government would have to undergo is if this man dies in exile, his parents and his relatives will blame the government for it. And that will cause a lot of acrimony amongst the parents and the government because, most of these are brothers and sisters. So that is it. But all these other stories of soldiers there and this man is doing something here and that is happening there, that is not something that we should have. However, now that Uganda is having oil, now that Uganda is sorting itself, our enemies can always pick that option, fund that option, project that option to destabilize the country called Uganda. To destabilize the country called Uganda. So, what do we need to do for ourselves? We need to begin developing the consciousness that there is nobody out there that will bring you freedom. Freedom is an individual thing. You as a country must bring freedom from yourself. Every time I hear people talking, they're talking about our development partners. Development partners? Since when did anybody in the world, in Europe, go in another country to bring development? Since when? That never happened, and it will never happen. There will never be a single European nation, a single Anglo-American nation that will go into an African country or another country that is not white, that is not European, and seek to bring development. You need to call them what they are. Your exploitment partner. Your exploitment partner. Your colonizement partner. Colonizement, exploitment, and subjugationment. And you have to do it yourself.